Imagine this for a second. You make a small mistake, right? Something totally human. And bam, immediately there's this internal voice going, seriously, you blew it. What were you thinking? Or maybe it's more subtle, like, you're just not good enough. Everyone else has it figured out. Why can't you? We are often our own absolute harshest critics, aren't we? That inner voice, it can be relentless. It just chips away at your confidence, keeps you feeling stuck. You know, we might give endless understanding to a friend who messes up, but then turn this really cold shoulder to ourselves.
Yeah, and what's fascinating, and maybe a little counterintuitive, is that this self-criticism, well, it feels like it's trying to protect us, maybe motivate us, right? To keep us on our toes. But it often does the exact opposite. It can actually make the suffering worse, hinder our growth. It kind of drives us deeper into these cycles of avoidance or just endlessly rethinking things, sometimes even, self-hatred.
But what if there was another way? Seriously. A path not just to quiet that inner critic down, but to actually transform that self-judgment into, well, a powerful source of strength and resilience, and maybe even better motivation. That is exactly what we are diving into today, the profound practice of self-compassion. And look, it's not about being soft or just letting yourself off the hook for everything. Not at all. It's actually a deeply effective, research-backed way to build real inner peace and, truly thrive, to help you reach your goals, but through genuine support, not fear. So our mission in this deep dive, we want to unpack the science behind it, the practical habits of self-compassion. We'll explore what it really means, why it's so vital for your well-being, and give you some concrete strategies, things drawn from experts from real-world experience to help you cultivate a kinder, more understanding relationship with yourself. Okay, so let's unpack this thing. Self-compassion, like we said, many of us, we're instinctively kind to others when they're struggling. We get it. But turn that lens inward. But not so much usually. So what is self-compassion, like, really?
Right. Well, at its core, self-compassion is basically about treating yourself with the same warmth, the same care, the same understanding that you would offer to a dear friend who's having a hard time. Kristen Neff, she's a key researcher here, defines it with three main parts, and they're all connected. First, there's self-kindness. So this means being gentle, being understanding with yourself, rather than, harshly critical or judgmental, especially when you hit those setbacks or feel inadequate. It's really about accepting that imperfection is normal. It's human, not demanding constant perfection. Second component, common humanity. This is about recognizing that, look, suffering and personal shortcomings, they're just part of the shared human experience. It's not just you. You're absolutely not alone in your struggles. Everyone fails. Everyone feels disappointment. Everyone feels pain at times. And this helps counter those feelings of isolation, right? It connects us. And the third piece is mindfulness. So this involves holding your difficult experiences, your tough thoughts, your emotions, holding them in a balanced awareness. Not suppressing them, pretending they're not there, but also not over-identifying with them, getting totally swept away. It's more about observing them, like, okay, this is here, without that intense aversion or reaction.
Okay, that framework is super helpful. Self-kindness, common humanity, mindfulness. But here's where it gets really interesting, because I think a lot of people hear self-compassion and they immediately think, oh, that sounds like self-pity or weakness, maybe even selfishness. But the research, well, it tells a very different story, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. A completely different story. I mean, study after study consistently shows that self-compassion is actually an antidote to self-pity. It leads to less rumination, not more, and better mental health overall. For instance, there was this study looking at undergrads, and it found higher self-compassion meant less brooding about bad stuff, which in turn explained fewer symptoms of anxiety and depression. It wasn't about wallowing. So it's a really powerful source of coping, of resilience, definitely not weakness. There was another fascinating study on people going through divorce. Participants who showed more self-compassion when talking about their breakup, they actually had better psychological adjustment months down the line. And that was even when controlling for other things, like how optimistic they were generally or their self-esteem levels.
Wow, that's significant.
It really is. And it's also not about narcissism or being self-absorbed. Self-esteem often relies on feeling better than others, comparing yourself.
Yeah.
Self-compassion, it's about accepting our shared human imperfection. It's more process-oriented, focusing on growth, on our inherent worth, not just on external results or how we stack up against somebody else.
Okay, so if self-compassion is the antidote, like you said, then maybe the first step is really recognizing the poison, right? That inner critical voice. It often feels like just one nagging voice, but the research suggests it can actually take many different forms. So what does that look like? What does this mean for us trying to understand ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great point. If we connect this to the bigger picture, These inner critics, they're not all the same. They're not one size fits all. There was this qualitative study, really insightful, looking at people who are highly effective at coping. And they identified 6 pretty distinct types of inner critics, falling under 3 kind of core themes. Understanding which one or maybe which ones tend to show up for you. That's a really powerful first step toward managing it. So the first theme is basically, I am okay, but I need improving.
Right.
There's this underlying sense of okayness, but a push. Under this theme, we find the teamster. Think of like a drill sergeant, maybe. This critic is constantly pushing you. Do more, do less, do it differently. It's often driven by this fear of missing out, FOMO, or just a relentless chase for perfection. Like one person in the study talked about the pandemic, feeling I wasn't doing enough and then I couldn't concentrate properly, just constantly afraid they were missing out on something. It's that perfectionist drive.
Oh, I think many of us can relate to that one, the never enough feeling.
Exactly. Then there's the non-feeler. This voice insists, don't feel things. Be even-tempered. Keep it together. It sees intense emotions as somehow inappropriate or maybe threatening. An example from the research was someone feeling guilty about their own feelings, thinking, I shouldn't feel this way when there are people whose lives are much more difficult just because they had less contact with friends. So they criticize their own emotions.
Judging yourself for having feelings. Wow.
Yeah. And the third one under this first theme is the worrier. This one's always on high alert, always telling you, be prepared. Something bad is going to happen. And it criticizes you for not being able to control things that are fundamentally uncontrollable, unpredictable situations. Yeah. One participant described their head just being full of all the ways it could turn out, what I'm doing wrong, how I'm behaving when facing something risky. Just constant anxiety projection.
Okay, so that's theme 1. Okay, but need improving. Teamster, non-feeler, worrier. What's the second theme?
All right, theme 2 shifts slightly. It's, I am okay, but improving would help. Still okayness, but the focus shifts a bit. Here we have not good enough for self. This critic tells you, be better than you are now. But the comparison is against your own internal standards, which are often impossibly high. We heard from a student in the study just beating themselves up over procrastinating on their thesis, thinking, when I can't even achieve my own goals, then my biggest critic is actually me. It's that internal benchmark.
The internal perfectionist again, but focused inward.
Precisely. And then there's not good enough for others. Similar, but this one says be better in the eyes of others. The focus here is much more on social comparison, maybe comparing yourself to idealized people or perceived expectations. For instance, someone feeling you're not good enough. They chose someone else after not getting a job. The criticism is really driven by how they think others see them.
Okay, that makes sense. Internal standards versus perceived external standards. And the third theme, you mentioned it was the most challenging.
Yeah, the third theme is I am not okay, and it is hard to be different. This one carries a much heavier weight. And under this, we find the hated self-critic. This is generally the most destructive type. It's characterized by really intense self-disgust, self-attacking thoughts like, you just can't be yourself.
Yeah.
A really raw example from the study was someone thinking, you fat girl, you are unbearable, you lazy, just after gaining some weight. This type is often seen more in clinical samples, indicating really high levels of self-criticism, bordering on self-hate. It's deeply painful.
Gosh, hearing those laid out, it really is powerful. Recognizing which of these voices tends to speak up for you personally. It's like you finally realize that voice isn't necessarily you, is it? It's maybe just that overly zealous internal committee meeting, like you said. And once you can name it, give it a label, it feels like you can finally turn on the light, maybe understand where it's coming from, what it's trying to do, even if it's misguided.
Exactly. Naming it is a huge step, which of course raises the big question. Okay, once we've identified these patterns, these voices, what do we actually do? How do we respond? And the really good news here is that self-compassion, well, it's a skill. And like any skill playing piano, learning a language, it can be learned and it can definitely be strengthened through practice.
Okay, good. Because that's where the rubber meets the road for you listening right now. We've got some incredibly practical, research-backed exercises you can actually start using today, maybe even right after this deep dive. Let's start with strategy 1. This one's quite simple conceptually. The how would you treat a friend test. Just try this thought experiment. Think about a close friend, someone you really care about. Imagine they're really struggling or feeling awful about themselves because they messed up. What would you actually say to them? What tone of voice would you use?
Yeah, picture that scenario clearly. Now, compare that response to how you typically respond to yourself when you're in a similar situation. When you're the one struggling or feeling bad. Do you notice a difference? Often it's a huge difference, right? This simple exercise, it really highlights that common disconnect we have. And it's a powerful invitation to just try treating yourself like you would treat that good friend. It's often quite surprising, even shocking, how much harsher we are on ourselves than we'd ever dream of being to someone else.
That's a great starting point. Okay, what's next?
All right, strategy 2 is the self-compassion break. This one is fantastic. It's like an on-the-job self-care tool you can literally use anytime, any place, especially when you feel that stress or pain bubbling up. And it cleverly brings all three of those core components together: mindfulness, common humanity, and self-kindness. So here's how it works. 3 steps. First, mindfulness. Acknowledge your suffering. Just notice it. Silently say to yourself, maybe this is a moment of suffering, or ouch, this hurts, or just this is hard. Try to really feel the discomfort in your body just as it is without fighting it immediately. Second step, common humanity. Remind yourself you're not alone in feeling this way. Think something like suffering is a part of life, or other people feel like this too, or I'm not alone, we all struggle sometimes. It just broadens your perspective beyond your own isolated feeling.
Connecting to that bigger picture.
Exactly. And finally, third step, self-kindness. Offer yourself some comfort. Maybe place your hands gently over your heart or stroke your arm, or find some other soothing touch that feels right for you. Then ask yourself, what do I need to hear right now to express kindness to myself? Maybe it's simply, may I be kind to myself, or may I accept myself just as I am in this moment, or perhaps, may I forgive myself? This little break, it really helps you consciously evoke self-compassion right when you need it most.
I love that. It's so practical and immediate. Now, beyond that sort of in-the-moment self-talk, sometimes maybe we need a different way to process things. Which brings us to strategy 3, journaling for self-compassion. Maybe you already keep a journal, lots of people do. But have you ever tried using it specifically through this lens, this filter of self-compassion?
Yeah, journaling can be such a powerful tool for processing emotions and boosting well-being. And you can definitely structure it compassionately. So when you write about something that made you feel bad or something you judged yourself for, you consciously apply those 3 components we keep talking about. For mindfulness, you'd write about the painful emotions, but try to accept them non-judgmentally. Like, okay, I felt frustrated, I overreacted, I felt kind of foolish. Just state it. Then, for common humanity, connect your experience to the broader human condition. You might write, look, everyone overreacts sometimes, it's only human. Or maybe consider the circumstances, I was really tired and stressed, which contributed.
Understanding the context.
Right. And finally, for self-kindness, you write kind, understanding words to yourself. Adopt a gentle, reassuring tone in your writing. It's okay. You messed up, but it wasn't the end of the world. I get how frustrated you were, and you just lost it for a second.
That makes journaling feel much more purposeful. And, if you're ever just staring at a blank page, not sure where to start, our sources actually offered some great prompts. Things like, list 10 things you actually love most about yourself, which can be hard but useful. Or write about a time where you showed confidence and courage instead of fear. And someone else shared, they simply write, almost like a mantra, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be at peace. Like being their own little inner cheerleader, even when they're feeling down.
Those are great prompts. Okay, moving on to strategy 4, which is super crucial. Changing your critical self-talk. Directly addressing that voice. First step here, you just have to notice when you're being self-critical. Become aware of it. What specific words are you using? What's the tone of that inner voice? Is it harsh, cold, angry? Does it maybe even remind you of someone from your past, like a critical parent or teacher?
Yeah.
Just becoming aware is the absolute first step. Name it to tame it, as they say. Like if you eat 1 too many cookies, does your inner voice scream, you're so disgusting, or you make me sick? Just noticing that content and tone.
Okay, so notice it, name it. Then what? Because my instinct might be to get angry at the critic, like, shut up. But you said earlier that might not be helpful.
Exactly. That's the really unexpected, kind of tricky part. Don't criticize the critic, because that just creates this meta-criticism loop, right? You end up criticizing yourself for being critical, which just reinforces the whole pattern. Instead, the idea is to try and soften that critical voice with compassion. You might say internally something like, okay, I hear you. I know you're worried about me. Maybe you feel unsafe, but honestly, you're causing me unnecessary pain right now. Could you maybe let my inner compassionate self say a few words?
Acknowledging its perhaps misguided protective intent.
Yes. And then you actively work to reframe those judgmental thoughts into more factual, objective ones. So if your inner critic screeches, I am so nosy, I shouldn't have asked such personal questions, you could reframe it to something more neutral, like, okay, I asked one question about my boss's marriage, that in this moment, reflecting on it, I wish I hadn't asked.
Mm.
See how that removes the harsh self-judgment? It allows for constructive reflection on the behavior. Maybe I'll be more mindful next time without attacking your fundamental self-worth.
That reframing is key, taking the sting out of it. You mentioned touch earlier, too. How does that fit in here?
Ah, yes, the power of touch. Physical gestures are incredibly powerful. Don't underestimate them. Gently stroking your arm, or maybe holding your face tenderly in your hands for a moment, or just placing a hand over your heart. These actions can literally tap into your body's caregiving system. This can release oxytocin, which helps calm your nervous system down. It's physiology. And even if the feelings of warmth aren't quite there at first, the advice is to just act kindly toward yourself physically. The research suggests that genuine warmth and caring often follow the action. It's this bidirectional link between body and brain. Changing your posture or using soothing touch can actually combat those critical thoughts.
Fascinating. Okay, strategy number 5 sounds a little different, maybe a bit unconventional at first, but you said it's remarkably effective.
Yes.
Strategy 5, talking to a younger version of yourself. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this one can be really helpful when directing compassion inward feels particularly difficult or blocked. Sometimes it's easier to direct it outward first, even if it's towards a version of yourself. So you think of a younger you, maybe you as a child or a teenager who might have been feeling a similar difficult emotion like embarrassment or hopelessness or maybe fear. Then you ask yourself, what would I say to that younger version of me who was feeling this way? For instance, a client felt he'd really blown a first impression, just felt mortified. When asked what he'd say to his younger self feeling that same intense embarrassment or hopelessness, he could suddenly access this really tender, understanding voice. He said something like, being embarrassed is just the worst feeling. I know how uncomfortable that is, buddy.
So by externalizing it to younger you, it unlocks that caring voice.
Exactly. It unlocks that tender voice, and then often quite subtly, that compassion starts to apply to your present self who's feeling the difficult emotion right now. It's a skillful bypass sometimes.
That's a really creative approach. Okay, one more strategy.
Right. Finally, strategy 6. Identifying your values. This is about making your self-compassion purposeful, connecting it to what truly matters to you. Self-compassion isn't just about vaguely being nice to yourself. It's arguably more effective when it supports your genuine needs and helps you live a life aligned with your core values. So take some time to reflect. Maybe ask yourself, what do you really want your life's obituary? Bit morbid, I know, but effective. What do you want it to say about who you were and what you stood for? What core values emerge from that? Honesty, courage, connection, learning. Then you can assess honestly how you are or maybe aren't currently living in line with those values and what short-term or long-term changes might you need to make. Remember, as our sources really emphasize, if you truly want to motivate yourself towards meaningful goals, love and self-support are ultimately much more powerful motivators than fear and self-criticism. It's about making choices, big and small, that align with what deeply matters to you.
Connecting self-compassion to purpose? That adds another layer. Okay, these practices all sound wonderful, truly valuable, but let's be real for a moment. Change isn't always easy or straightforward, is it? Which brings up a really important question. What happens if trying to practice self-compassion actually feels, well, hard at first? Or maybe even makes things feel worse initially.
That is such a crucial point to address because, yes, sometimes when we first start to consciously open the door to self-compassion, especially if we've been very self-critical for a long time, some old, unaddressed pain can rush out. There's actually a term for this, backdraft. It's borrowed from firefighting. You know, when firefighters open a door in a burning house, oxygen rushes in and sometimes flames rush out. Yeah. It's kind of like when we finally start offering ourselves unconditional love or acceptance, we suddenly become aware of all the conditions under which we felt unloved or unacceptable in the past. All that stored up pain can surface, and it can feel overwhelming, absolutely. But importantly, it's often a sign that healing is actually beginning. It means you're finally creating the space for some deep emotional processing to happen.
That makes so much sense. It's like, cleaning out a really cluttered closet. Sometimes it has to get way messier before it actually gets organized. But for someone just starting out, feeling that sudden rush of difficult emotion might be incredibly discouraging. They might think, see, this self-compassion stuff isn't working. What's the most important thing they should remember or do if that backdraft happens?
Right. It can definitely feel like this isn't working. So the key is, if you feel overwhelmed, the most compassionate response is actually to gently pull back a bit, temporarily. Don't force it. Focus on grounding yourself. Simple things. Feel the soles of your feet firmly on the floor. Focus on the physical sensation of your breath going in and out. Just anchor yourself in the present moment. Or you could shift to simple behavioral acts of self-care. Make yourself a comforting cup of tea. Pet your cat or dog. Listen to some calming music. Go for a gentle walk. These small, tangible acts reinforce the habit of giving yourself what you need, even if the internal emotional landscape feels turbulent. And remember, crucially, self-compassion is a practice of goodwill toward yourself, not necessarily good feelings immediately. It's about providing comfort and support, regardless of the emotional intensity that might arise. Just be a slow learner. Be patient with the process and trust that the habit, the skill, will strengthen over time. It really can transform your inner world.
Be a slow learner. I like that. Okay, as we start to wrap up this deep dive, let's just recap the essence. Remember that building these habits for self-compassion, it really is a journey, isn't it? It's about intentionally cultivating that self-kindness, connecting with our shared common humanity, remembering we're not alone in our struggles, and staying mindfully present with our experience, even maybe especially when things are tough.
Exactly, and it represents a really powerful shift, moving away from that exhausting, often counterproductive cycle of self-criticism towards building a more resilient, supportive inner world. And the research, as we've seen, is overwhelmingly clear. This shift leads to greater well-being, more sustainable motivation, less anxiety and depression, and ultimately a richer, more fulfilling life.
So maybe here's a provocative thought for you to explore on your own after listening. What would be truly possible in your life? What risks might you take? What dreams might you dare to chase if that inner voice, the one we all have, consistently became your kindest, most unwavering supporter? Always. What could change then?
It's a powerful question. So take these insights, these strategies we've discussed, and just experiment with them. Start small, be patient with yourself, compassionate with the process itself, and just watch, notice how your relationship with yourself and likely your whole life begins to gently transform.
Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive today. Until next time, please be kind to yourself.